Today is the 2000s decade versus the 2010s decade. Now, the 2000s team is going to be the LA Rams, and Calvin Johnson will be the captain. There will be a collection of players who were drafted between 2000 and 2009. The Denver Broncos will be the 2010s team, and they will be led by Patrick Mahomes. There will be a collection of players who were drafted between 2010 and 2019. We will complete a collection of challenges in practice mode, franchise mode, and a Super Bowl matchup to decide the winner. Starting with the 2000s decade's roster, they have Calvin Johnson leading the offense. He was drafted by the Detroit Lions in 2007, where he led the NFL in receiving yards in back-to-back seasons. To make this a little bit more interesting, we have to add one player from every NFL franchise to both teams. Larry Fitzgerald, Chad Johnson, and kick return specialist Percy Harvin will round out the rest of the wide receiver core, knocking off the Lions, Cardinals, Bengals, and Vikings off the list. The starting quarterback is going to be the GOAT, Tom Brady. He was drafted in the 6th round of the 2000 NFL draft by the New England Patriots. Backing him up is going to be Aaron Rodgers, since he was drafted in 2005 by the Packers. We have LaDainian Tomlinson of the Chargers and Marshawn Lynch, who was drafted by the Bills in 2007, and Brian Westbrook of the Eagles, rounding up their running back. At tight end will be Jeremy Shockey. The offensive line includes the Hall of Famer Joe Thomas, Dwayne Brown, Nick Mangold, Steve Hutchinson, and Jake Long. And with the offense complete, 15 NFL teams have been checked off the list. The defense is led by Hall of Famer Ed Reed. The rest of the safeties include Troy Polamalu from the Steelers, Sean Taylor from Washington, and Reggie Nelson, who was drafted by Jacksonville. The New York Jets drafted Darrelle Revis with the 14th overall pick back in 2007. Tampa Bay's Aqib Talib and Atlanta's D'Angelo Hall will round out the rest of the corners for the team. And just like that, we have 21 NFL teams knocked off the list so far. At linebacker, DeMarcus Ware was just inducted into the Hall of Fame, and joining him will be Patrick Willis of the Niners, Brian Urlacher of the Bears, and Derek Johnson of the Chiefs. At defensive end, we have Dwight Freeney, Chris Long, Julius Peppers, and Elvis Dumerville, followed by Albert Hainsworth from the Titans at defensive tackle. With just the Raiders and the Saints left to knock off, we have Sebastian Janikowski at kicker, and then Thomas Morstead at punter. The 2010s decade roster is led by Patrick Mahomes, who was drafted 10th overall by the Kansas City Chiefs in 2017, and he has already won 2 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and 2 NFL MVPs, and he is just 27 years old. Backing him up will be first overall pick by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jameis Winston. At running back, we have Brown superstar Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley of the Giants, who still hadn't signed a long-term deal yet. Devontae Adams has been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he was lucky enough to be drafted by the Green Bay Packers in 2014 and play with Aaron Rodgers. Alongside him will be Stephon Diggs, who was drafted by Minnesota, Julio Jones, who was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, and then we have a speedy kick returner, John Ross, who was drafted by Cincinnati. 8 teams have been knocked off the list so far, and at tight end, they have Travis Kelce and TJ Hawkinson. The offensive line includes Trent Williams, Quentin Nelson, Jason Kelce, Zach Martin, and Ryan Ramczyk. They also have fullback Kyle Juszczyk, who was drafted by the Ravens. And just like that, we have another 7 teams off the list, and we just have 17 more to go. The defense might be even better, with LA Rams superstar Aaron Donald leading the defensive line. Jeffrey Simmons recently had a breakout season with the Titans, and he will back up Donald. Nick Bosa was drafted by the Niners in 2009 with the 2nd overall pick, and on the opposite side of him will be another top NFL draft pick in Jadeveon Clowney, who was drafted number 1 by Houston. TJ Watt was drafted in 2017 by the Steelers, and he will lead the linebacker. Khalil Mack, drafted by the Raiders, Roquan Smith by the Bears, and Bobby Wagner by the Seahawks will round out the linebacker core. Moving on to the secondary, Jalen Ramsey has been one of the best lockdown corners in the NFL for quite some time now. Joining him will be Stephon Gilmore, who was drafted by the Bills, Patrick Peterson by the Cardinals, and Xavier Howard by the Dolphins. With just a handful of teams left to complete, Derwin James of the Chargers, Devin McCourty of the Patriots, and Jamal Adams, who was drafted by the Jets, will be the safeties for the 2010 decade team. At kicker, they have Harrison Butker, drafted by Carolina, and punter Riley Dixon, drafted by Denver. I'd like to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's video. Morgan & Morgan is the official law firm partner of the UFC, and they are giving away 2 tickets to UFC 292 in Boston, which includes $2,000 for travel expenses. Fighting is in Morgan & Morgan's DNA, and just like UFC fighters who bring their everything in the octagon, Morgan & Morgan attorneys bring their everything for clients in courtrooms across America. Over the years, Morgan & Morgan has built a reputation for fighting back and never settling for less than what their client deserves. They're not afraid to go to trial and will fight to the very end for their client. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm with more than 900 attorneys and more than 100 offices in all 50 states. To enter the giveaway, go to morganufc.com/upandadam for your chance to win tickets to UFC 292 in Boston on August 19th. Both teams are loaded with talent, and this is going to be a a great competition. The first challenge is the punt return. The 2000s team is up first, and Percy Harvin returns it for a solid 15 yards. On attempt number 2, Harvin is able to pick up 14 and then follows it up with a huge 19-yard pickup on attempt 3 for a total of 48 yards. Ryan Westbrook will take the next 2 attempts, and he is able to pick up 11 yards. And on his last attempt, Westbrook carries it for 16 yards for a total of 75 yards, and that's going to be really tough to beat. First attempt for John Ross and the 2010s team, and he is able to pick up a solid 9 yards. On attempt number 2, he is tackled almost immediately, picking up just 6 yards, and then 9 yards on his third attempt for a total of 24 yards. Saquon is next, and he needs some huge gains to make the comeback here, and on his first attempt, he is able to pick up 14 yards. On his final attempt for the 2000s Decades team, he is only able to pick up 7 yards for a total of 45, which is not good enough to beat the 2000s Decades team in the punt return challenge. Next up is the goal line phase challenge, where 3 receivers on both teams go one-on-one with the best corner. Starting with the 2000s team, Tom Brady lobs one up to Calvin Johnson, who was able to come down with it over Jalen Ramsey. But on attempt number 2, Calvin failed to come down with the pass. Larry Fitzgerald is up next, and he makes a huge one-handed catch over Jalen Ramsey for a touchdown. But on his second attempt, Ramsey is able to swat it away, and it gets picked off. Chad Johnson is up next, and on his first attempt, he jumps up and makes a two-handed catch. But on their last attempt, Ramsey is able to knock the ball out of the air. And the 2000s team finishes with 3 touchdowns on just 6 attempts. The 2010 team is up next, and Patrick Mahomes lobs it up to Devontae Adams, who catches it off the swat from Darrelle Revis. And on attempt number 2, Adam makes the catch and is able to hang on to it for the touchdown. Stephon Diggs is next, but he is unable to hang on to it. But on the very next attempt, he is somehow able to stay with it and catch it before going out of bounds. With just 2 attempts left, Julio Jones just needs to make 1 catch to win this challenge, but he fails to hang on to it. On his final attempt, Julio is able to get up and catch it for the touchdown. The 2010s team was able to score 4 on 6 attempts, defeating the 2000s team in the goal line phase challenge. The passing challenge is up next, and whichever team tallies up the most yards wins. If a quarterback gets sacked, it'll be minus 5 yards, and if a quarterback throws an interception, it'll be minus 10 yards. On their first attempt, Brady is able to hit Jeremy Shockey over the middle for 25 yards. He immediately tries to go back to Shockey, but he overthrows him. On attempt number 3, Brady finds his tight end for 21 yards. Unfortunately, on his next attempt, Tom Brady throws an interception to Stephon Gilmore, losing 10 yards. Brady finds Larry Fitzgerald for a huge 29-yard gain on his last attempt, putting their total to a respectable 65 yards. Mahomes starts off strong, hitting his favorite target in Travis Kelce for 24 yards. And he follows that up with another 25 yards to Kelce. And why not go right back to that on attempt number 3, where he finds Kelce for another 25 yards. So far, 75 yards on just 3 attempts. But on attempt number 4, Mahomes gets sacked, losing 5 yards. And then on their last attempt, Mahomes throws a beam to Stephon Diggs for a huge 26-yard gain for a grand total of 95 yards. The 2010s team wins the passing challenge and are now up 2-1 in this competition. Next up is the franchise challenge. Whichever team, the 2000s or the 2010s, has the best record at the end of the season will win this challenge. Through 7 games, both teams are undefeated. The 2010s team are currently 7-0, while the 2000s played 1 less game but are 6-0. Tom Brady has thrown for 1,500 yards with 18 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions, while Patrick Mahomes is over 2,100 yards with 15 touchdowns. LaDainian Tomlinson is off to a strong start, rushing for 542 yards with 2 touchdowns, but Nick Chubb of the 2010s team has 612 yards with 16 touchdowns through 7 games. That must be a record, right? And now, stepping to the end of the season, can one team remain undefeated? And it looks like the 2000s team will remain undefeated, going 17-0, while Patrick Mahomes and the 2010s team lost 2 games. They ended up losing to the Cardinals in week 15 and then lost to the 2000s team in week 16. The 2000s team finished first in the NFL in offensive yards, while the 2010s team was not too far behind in second place. Mahomes ended up leading the NFL in passing yards, but Brady led the NFL with 59 touchdowns. The running back battle was a good one, with Tomlinson finishing the season with 1,600 yards, but teammate Marshawn Lynch scored 20 touchdowns. Nick Chubb slowed down a little, finishing with 1,400 rushing yards, but a league-leading 32 touchdowns. Chad Johnson led the 2000s team with 1,700 yards and 18 touchdowns, while Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs combined for 22 receiving touchdowns this season. Julius Peppers finished the season with 27.5 sacks, while Nick Bosa had 20.5. Both teams made it to the Super Bowl after easily defeating their opponents in the divisional and championship games, but after simming the game, the 2000s team won the Super Bowl and completed the undefeated season. And after the franchise challenge, it is all tied up, where both teams have 2 challenge wins each. The final challenge is the Super Bowl matchup, where we have Tom Brady and the rest of the 2000s team going up against Patrick Mahomes and the rest of the 2010s team. Both teams failed to score any points on their opening drives, but Tom Brady was able to find Calvin Johnson over the middle for a huge pickup. On the very next play, Tomlinson finds a hole and picks up a monster game, putting the 2000s team into scoring position. And in the red zone, Tom Brady throws a beam to Chad Johnson for the touchdown. Faced with a big 3rd and 13, Mahomes buys time in the pocket to find a wide open Devontae Adams to put them in the red zone. Unfortunately, they went 3-0 and Harrison Buckner misses the 22-yard field goal. Lots of back and forth in the second quarter, and Patrick Mahomes throws a rocket of a pass to John Ross, who easily walks into the end zone to tie the game. But just before halftime, Brady finds a streaking Larry Fitzgerald for a 28-yard touchdown pass to take the lead. The second half started horribly for the 2010s, with Mahomes not being able to get a first down and Tom Brady immediately finding Larry Fitzgerald for another 52-yard touchdown pass. And early in the fourth quarter, Tom Brady puts the dagger in, finding Jeremy Shockey for a 1-yard touchdown, putting the lead to 28. There was no coming back from a 21-point deficit, and the 2000s decade team, led by Tom Brady, ended up winning the Super Bowl challenge. But more importantly, they ended up winning the entire competition by a score of 3 challenges to the 2010s team 1. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out where I had MMG's Dream Team go up against RBT's Dream Team. We'll see who won that one.